Naturally, I'm thinking, is he going to ask me for a raise on the air? That would be
right
wild.
now,
That would
right
be
now
wild.
on the podcast.
Okay.
And we're not
Let's-
leaving this room
right.
until,
Yeah, doors are
I get an answer. Welcome, everybody, to our second episode of the Mentorship Mindset. I'm Brian. This is Isaac. Today, we're excited. We have a very special guest who we're bringing onto the show, Dr. Fernando Armendariz, and we are going to be talking with him about his behavioral worldview and his perspectives on the field, which is very exciting. We're also going to be talking about kind of managing and juggling life events and work priorities and how to maintain all of those things in a healthy and sound way. And we're going to be talking about the start of conference season. Here we are, round 2, episode 2. How's it going?
It's going. It's
Yeah.
been one of those months. It's been a little bit tougher in my role this month. It's been a little bit more challenging, but we'll leave that one at that. But yeah, busy. I think one of the things about this time of the year is that it kind of begins our conference seasons. So, and I believe we're going to talk about that at some point in this podcast. But
Yeah.
we just had CalABA, and I was pretty involved in that and doing some presentations and all of that. So, that kind of makes it busy. And then there's upcoming conferences later in the year that, I have to prepare some presentations for and stuff. So, it's kind of definitely the beginning of the year conference seasons that, in addition to the work or day job, it kind of adds a little bit of extra work, but it's also fun. So it's kind of a mixed bag, So,
Totally.
so yeah, so I'm kind of in that mode and just, trying to manage life and, and be able to stay above it all. So yeah.
Right on. Very cool.
How you doing?
I am also doing,
Yeah.
hanging
Yeah.
in there. I love how that's like the very obvious code for like I'm keeping a happy face, but like there is stuff
Right.
going on.
It's like the cliche answer of it's going.
Yeah.
Like when you say, how's it going? It's going.
Yeah, that's
You're
good.
like, oh, something's going on.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but how's it doing?
how's it doing? It has been it's been a bit of a challenging few months for me also. I'm talking about like managing life things also. So we're recording on a Tuesday. Today's Tuesday, right? I think. For the rest of the day, it's Tuesday. And I am moving this Saturday. So
Right.
really, really close, which is super exciting. I've told you off camera, but moving into a house, which is a life-changing thing.
Exciting.
Very exciting. Did
Yeah.
not think I would be this fortunate at this point in my life
Yeah.
to be able to move into a house. So really great. But like honestly overwhelmed
Sure.
and stressed. For me, it's been difficult to try to find a sense of balance. And at the bare minimum, what I've done is kind of said, okay, anything that's like not work or not moving related, gonna completely table that for now. Other than like the minimal self-care stuff that I need to do. How do you and you can answer this for like you, Isaac, or like how does one go about just like juggling all of the things going on, especially when there are like significant life events happening, when work is still going, and in my particular case, like work has been increasing in its demands too. So love to hear your advice.
Yeah. I always try to keep the perspective of how it all works together, meaning the day job, as busy as it is, supports the shelter that we have. I keep on understanding the importance of that, where I can't just say, well, right now I'm moving, so therefore I'm gonna I can't do this because I'm moving. Somehow I have to make it work where they all complement each other, and then there's also our responsibilities to our partners and, our family if we have that and all of that. So it becomes a big juggling act when that happens, so for me, what's helped is to try to just keep a balanced perspective of, my career, my job, supports my transition to this new home that I'm excited about. But I need to be able to find space, and just to also know that during this temporary, brief period of time, it's going to be really busy.
Mhm.
And I might not feel balanced, right? Because it's going to be, taking care of my responsibilities at work, and then maybe coming home and packing and doing all the things that are dreadful,
Yeah.
right? Because then, as you're doing that, then you're going like, oh my gosh, how do I collect, how did I collect so much stuff, where it becomes overwhelming, but it's something that you just push through because there's going to be the day where you're going to be settled into your new home. You're going to feel the relief of it. And that's also one of the things too, is just to look ahead and know that you will be settled, and you're going to be in a place that is going to maybe accommodate your life better. You're going to have more space. You're going to be able to do things that you might not be able to do now. So just know that this is a means to an end. But during this stretch, just tact. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be stressful. That's okay, and just take it day by day, one foot in front of the other, and you're going to get through it. And then you're going to look back and it's like, hey, I got through it.
Mhm.
Yes, it was stressful, but I got through it. And now I'm settled in my new place, and you were able to manage all of that. Right.
Mhm.
So, I mean, those are some of the things that I use to just get through some of those tough transitions, tough stretches, because we always get through
Mhm.
and just having that gritty perspective of. We will get through it.
Mhm.
I think sometimes if we perpetuate on like, oh my gosh, this is so tough, I can't do it, like it feels too much, then it almost like adds more weight, you
Mhm.
know, because I think as humans, we're capable of so much. Tough stretches are inevitable,
Mhm.
so do we crumble under those tough stretches, or do we just learn the repertoire of, I'm going to push through it, and then we will look back and say that was an experience, and look at where I am now,
Mhm.
right? So uh, it's very similar to promotions or moving into a more challenging position.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's that transition, and there's like, oh my, how am I going to do it? How, like, it just feels like so much, like I'm increasing my responsibilities. But then your behavior is shaped through these natural circumstances, and you learn the repertoire. You put systems in place to be able to handle higher
Mhm.
level work, and then you look back and say like, hey, I was able to do it.
As I have more life experiences
Yeah.
like that, it's amazing to see how it typically, at least for me, has gelled together that way,
Yeah.
where it really feels like I am building myself up with
Right.
each like struggle. I'm no stranger to moving. Originally from New Jersey, then
Yeah.
went to college in New Orleans, then went back to New Jersey the summer after I graduated undergrad, then came out here.
Yeah.
Like I've driven across the country a few
Okay.
times. Uh, Funny enough, the worst move I had, or the hardest move I had, was in my current apartment complex. Moving from one unit to another
Okay.
was the absolute worst
Yeah.
because you can't load stuff up on a truck when you're just like
Right.
walking down the sidewalk 500 feet and you're at
Right.
your new
Right.
unit.
That's unique.
It was
Yeah.
such a pain. We had
Yeah.
to like dolly everything one by one, and you
Right.
couldn't like get
Right.
like a mass of boxes or
Yeah.
furniture. So
Yeah.
this isn't that, which is good.
Yeah.
What's making it challenging for me this time around is I definitely do have heightened work responsibilities
Sure.
more so than ever,
Yeah.
kind of learning to juggle all of the things. I know we've talked about like whenever possible, delegate
Yeah.
work responsibly, which now I have the luxury of doing,
Hmm.
which feels great to have people who like I trust, who I can hand things off to.
Yeah.
Um, Something else that kind of came up naturally
Yeah.
is I was in session with supervising a staff, and we were working with this teenage learner who's in high school, and we kind of got into this discussion how he brought up like, my parents always tell me to try my best,
Hmm.
and I don't know if I like fully buy that. And I was like, I think that's really reasonable.
Right.
Like, that's super mature and really reasonable. And it made me think about my own life and thinking about in order to at least for me personally right now, hopefully as the years go on and I get more used to more responsibilities
Right.
kind of happening at the same time,
Right.
it won't feel like it's as much and I'll
Right.
be able to tackle it more. But for me right now, kind of this idea of like, what if I dial things back a little bit so I'm at like 80 to 85%
Mhm.
of performing kind of across the board.
Right.
Of course, there are times where I have to go more than that
Yeah.
in any given moment. But if I try to kind of keep that balance of
Right.
like, I'm still gonna do what I need to do and what I want to do well,
Right.
but also being like accepting of the fact that like not everything, especially while there's a lot happening, requires me to like do my absolute best.
Right. I think that's reasonable. And I think that's part of just giving yourself grace and the space that there's other things going on that require your immediate attention. So this might not be a stretch of time where you're at 100 or 110%, and
Mhm.
that's okay. We're,
Mhm.
we're all human, and we all go through stretches where we're not that, and that's okay,
Mhm.
and it could even be one of these moments where you talk to your direct supervisors and say, during these 2 weeks or whatever the time frame is, I'm going to be moving. I'm still going to take care of everything, but just so you know, there's things happening in my context
Mhm.
that are pulling me away from maybe being able to give the 100, 110%, as they say,
Mhm.
And I think, you're in a supportive environment where I think people will understand that.
Oh yeah.
And, just you priming people will help to build a community around you that will be able to support you.
Mhm.
So I think that's a very reasonable thing to do.
To piggyback off that, I don't know if I've shared this story with you. One time, I was, I think, gearing up to ask you for a raise,
Hmm.
and um, I was speaking with somebody who, was coaching me
Yeah.
through kind of how to approach that. Funny enough, it wasn't like the first time that I was asking for a raise.
Naturally, I'm thinking, is he going to ask me for a raise on the air? That would be
Right
wild.
now,
That would be
on
wild.
the podcast,
Okay.
and we're not
Let's,
leaving this room
right.
until
Doors
until
are
I get an
locked.
answer.
Right. Okay.
But I was talking about things that were happening in my life, and I was under the impression, I don't know exactly from
Yeah.
where, I mean, societally, that like it's almost like a sign of weakness to let your boss or your employer know about things that might be going on in your personal life,
Hmm.
especially in the context of like asking for a
Right.
raise. Like, no, it must be all about your
Right.
performance. And if you bring up like life circumstances, then that's almost like a crutch.
Right.
That was the impression I had coming into that conversation. Um, and this person, and I so appreciate it, very firmly told me, Brian, you should never feel like you need to qualify
Hmm.
that you're a human being
Right.
and that you have life things
Right.
and that, uh, you know, different changing life circumstances will dictate maybe what you're looking for in
Right.
pay or
Right.
from work. And I left that conversation in tears in the best way
Right.
possible. I felt so validated just as a person that
Right.
like, oh, it's not this taboo thing to really like be vulnerable, open up, explain what's going on because good people are understanding.
Yeah.
And of course, here, I mean, I could go on and on about
Mhm.
like how that's been shown to me time and time again. Like there is understanding for all of that
Yeah.
stuff.
I feel like you are in that environment, and I agree. You don't have to qualify being human.
Mm,
Um, and I think all of that sounds reasonable. And I think it's okay. It's okay to go through life and be okay with it. So
mhm.
so are you asking for a raise or you're like, well,
No,
now that we're on the subject,
not
yeah,
not on the pod.
right, right.
Not on the
Maybe one day, maybe
yeah.
one day.
Save it for
Right,
another pod.
right. Okay,
But
okay.
but I do appreciate your perspective because just sometimes it's when you're in the moment,
Yeah.
it's tough to kind of see the correct path for me at least.
Yeah.
So it's always helpful to just like have somebody who, especially somebody who has gone through different stages and events in life, to kind of help me take a step back and get that larger perspective.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, there might be industries or businesses that are more, your personal life is your personal life. I just want, the performance of what we're paying for, and that's it. I don't want to deal with anything else. I think here, I think we do our best to be understanding to the best of our ability of what we all go through in life, and again, to the best of our ability, that is something, I think of who we're going to interview in a little bit. Dr. Fernando Armendariz talks a lot about how our context, produces our behavior, and we're always interacting with our context. And, so you can't pull that away. We are a product of, our environment and our circumstances. And that's just a big part of what we deal with. And that influences our work performance and all of that. And that's okay to have those ups and downs. The company will try to support to the best of its ability, and we will also have conversations when it just, when it's beyond what, a company can support, but it will always be, just those conversations and that understanding of, that there's other things we go through in life as well.
I've been nothing but positively reinforced by like being vulnerable, opening up and sharing my feelings with whether it's you or any of my other supervisors or superiors, whomever, just saying like, I'm not necessarily saying this one situation is a certain way or like this is the truth as I see it in a given context. But when I come to the table saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now, it's been met with nothing but support. Even with like gratitude, like that the supervisors and higher ups are grateful that I'm sharing this perspective and letting them know how I feel. And then pretty much every single time here at BDA, at least, I've been reinforced not just with like praise and gratitude, but also with like people seriously doing their part or their best to accommodate me in those situations and work with me on solutions. So, I know there's some people, probably many people, who are nervous or scared to put themselves in that position. But sharing my perspective, it has always gotten me the best results when I'm working. So don't be afraid to share and to be open.
Indeed. And I think being able to have those conversations allows us to have a real conversation and deal with some of the real issues, right? I know it's something that I've worked really hard with Brett, because I know his goal for me is always just tell me, like, tell me like it is. He's given me the coaching of, if something's going on, just be the first thing to tell me. Don't wait to the very end where you drop a bomb and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, like now that's another 30-minute conversation, but we're out of time type of thing. So it's something that I've personally had to work on, is just, getting to the point and the root cause quicker instead of taking the scenic route. So I think that is best practice when working with a mentor or a coach, is just to lay it out there and be able to work with the circumstances that you're dealing with, because we all deal with different things going on, and then kind of back to the first thing that I was talking about, there's also the balance of the grit part of it too. It's, learning how to push through these life events, because they're always going to be there, and how do we do that, so we could stay performing at our best, whatever that means at that time, while we're at work, because our clients, our staff, our company are expecting certain things out of us, and, there's kind of, I think, the balance of it, it can't just be too much leaning on one side, it's got to be a combination and a good balance.
Totally. And that's kind of my mindset in terms of like, while I'm going through this move and while, work is getting increasingly busy for me right now, if I can keep things across the board between 80 to 85% dialed in, that means when I'm freer, in responsibilities and everything, it frees up my bandwidth to hit more things at
Right.
100% or
Right.
110%.
Yep.
You're right, though. The stuff never ends.
Right.
The life things keep
Yeah.
coming up. I think I quoted this band on Behavior Analysts React, one of my favorite bands of all time, Vampire Weekend. They're really great with their lyrics,
Uh-huh.
and a line from one of their songs is, I thought that I was free from all of that questioning, but every time a problem ends, another one begins.
Right.
And it's like, yep, you're you might have like a brief window where
Right.
things really feel perfectly calm and
Right.
you can take all the deep breaths you
Right.
want and not feel rushed. But those moments are fleeting.
Right.
Very,
Right.
very shortly after that, karma will hit you with like, all right, well, now here's 3 problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deal with that.
And and a lot of times they're not problems, they're life events. It's, for
Fair.
instance, I remember at a younger age, you're kind of navigating through your career, and then all of a sudden you have kids,
Mhm.
right? And then learning, well, how do I be a professional? How do I raise a child? How do I support my partner?
Mhm.
How do we navigate? Do we both work? It's just, there's so many different logistics that are involved in that. That's another big learning curve. And then there might be the second child, and then you're learning how to navigate two. And then as they are doing their activities, you're learning how to juggle all those things. And it's just like one thing after another. Fast forward to kind of where I'm at now, where I have 2 college-age kids. You think like, oh, they're independent, they have their cars and stuff. It's actually still the grind of trying to teach them to become independent human beings and to be able to launch effectively and to be able to navigate post-graduation, where to me it's the same grind, but a different set of uh, events and issues that they're dealing with at their lives.
Mhm.
So it's just, I think, and then on top of that, then as our parents get older, I'm trying to help my mom purchase a house in Mexico where she lives. She's moved a couple times. I'm
Mhm.
trying to go out there and help her move on the weekends and then come back and do the work thing and stuff. So it's,
Mhm.
kind of like multi-generational type of work. It's that what they call the sandwich generation.
Uh-huh.
So again, it just, I think that's where just having the repertoire to be able to work through and just grind through those things and
Mhm.
just be able to still be effective, with all the other things that you do. It's just also a big part of this equation.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So,
My wife and I, our parents have had various like health issues.
yeah.
Her father passed away over
Yeah.
the summer, and that was the first like m- major grief of my life. Let alone obviously trying to support my wife through
Sure.
all of that. And I think that was probably my first big um milestone experience of like,
Yeah.
I mean, grief is such a powerful and ongoing, some people say never ending
Right.
process, right?
Right.
So, and we've already had discussions about like caring for parents and
Yeah.
things like that. Um, but at the same time, life does go on
Yeah.
in all of the other ways that it does. So, um, I know we talk about it a lot in general, but that theme of juggling, I
Right.
think, is something that is
Right.
just always there,
Right.
and figuring out, like you said, how to balance things out, how to maintain, where to find your grit
Right.
and get in touch with it.
Yeah.
It's all part of the process, really.
Indeed, and the more effective one can be to be able to navigate those life circumstances and push through and persevere. I mean, I think there's such pivotal behaviors, right,
Hmm.
or behavior cusps that allow for somebody to do other things. It's one of the things, talking about my college aged kids. They're going through their programs, they're going through their classes. The most important thing for us, my wife and I, are that they learn to persevere and they learn to push through the challenges,
Hmm.
because they both experience challenges in different ways. I think the theme of this discussion is life events are always there,
Hmm.
and how do we handle those life events,
Hmm.
and maybe it makes us grateful for when the weather is calm in our lives,
Hmm.
to be able to enjoy, and have gratitude for the calmness, because, just like with any weather, it'll change. And then we have to be able to push through that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
The most the most figurative sense of weathering the storm.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect.
That's it. Yeah.
And scene.
Right.
Perfect.
Right.
It won't get better than
Cue the
that.
clip. Yes.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for that.
Yeah.
It just feels good to like get some of that off my chest because I could only give so many responses of like it's going when there's like clearly stuff behind there too.
Well,
So,
congratulations on that. That'll be exciting,
oh,
and I
thank
look
you.
forward to hearing how that goes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
to hearing how you've settled in and enjoying your new home.
We'll have plenty of space to jam.
Let's do it.
Or, 5 minutes from the
That's-
clinic, I'm gonna get my own music room and we'll jam.
All
And
right.
I would say we'll tear the roof off, but like I'm renting, so we don't want to tear a
Yeah,
roof.
you don't want that
off.
expense. For sure.
Cool.
Awesome.
With that, we are excited to jump into our interview with Dr. Fernando Armendariz. Dr. Armendariz is going to be talking about the behavioral worldview and his perspectives on the field. So without further ado, Dr. Fernando Armendariz.
Dr. Armendariz, thank you so much for joining us here in our second episode of Mentorship Mindset, the podcast. We're excited to talk to you. We're excited to learn from you and your vast experience and your journey of mentorship and mentoring others and anything else that comes up. So this is going to be a space where you could share and there's no restrictions. So we're excited to be talking to you. And you were also our past guest mentor for our webinar series. And, it was a series and it was a webinar that received rave reviews with those that attended. And people were asking for a part 2. So hopefully we'll be able to get you back for a part 2. So we're excited to be interviewing you.
Great to be with you.
As a newer BCBA, and I mean I've only been in the field of ABA for just about 5 years. I think your viewpoint and your perspective is so important for anybody in this field, but especially those of us who are newer to this field to hear, because we were educated to really perform within this medical model. We weren't taught that there were other ways to apply this outside of just this very strict context. So I think that might be a little more on the nose of things that are American in general. If you could elaborate on exactly what you mean by the behavioral worldview as opposed to just ABA, like within the medical model.
It is interesting to me that you said to work within the medical model, because I do see what I see as ABA, in practice, I do see it much more congruent with the medical model psychology than with the science of behavior. All right, I'll explain to you why. I'll try to do it very briefly, although most of my friends would tell you it is impossible to get Fernando to answer anything briefly.
That's why we love having you.
We'll try. So what I call ABA is techniques that do not consider the major implication of the science of behavior. The main implication of the science of behavior is that behavior is shaped by all those contingencies, the responses we're receiving in our environment every second of every day. And if that's our main contribution, which came to revolutionize our world, because before we said, the child or the adult, they do things because of their, characteristics or their character, their personality, their disability, everything kind of, a spontaneous combustion from inside, which for a scientist that I was when I was taught as a young man, traditional psychology, it almost, when I go to a psychology class, I had to take my wife's anti-vomiting pills, you take when you're pregnant, because that was stuff that would make me vomit. So when somebody said, behavior of individuals is in function of outside environments and how they impact what you do, whoa, that's interesting. So then that's the main contribution. But then we go to ABA, and I don't see taking that consideration, because I see, for example, here's the definition of ABA. It is done out of context which is where does this kid live every second of his life? At home, some at school if they're big enough, if they're already beyond 3 years old. So out of context in a clinic, or maybe even a little room in the house where that's the therapy room, that's where the ABA person goes. Then there's a school, sometimes they go to the corner or some other little room. So out of context, then it is driven by conducted by the therapist or tech, not the teacher, not the parent, not the persons that the individual lives with every second. Is that violating our science? Oh, big time. Is the first thing being out of context violating our science? Yes. Our science is completely 100% contextual. All right. And then, then I say, all of the intervention by the person that doesn't live with a child, they're also adult-driven drills. First, they're repeated drills, which they're adult-driven. It's always, give me red, give me blue. So that, if you do it for many, many years, I've seen kids that can speak perfectly well. They can say, "Oh, I would like that cookie with a crumble, with a colorful sprinkles on top." They can speak that well. But if you put cookies there, they go, and they won't say anything until you say, "What do you want?" "Oh, I want those cookies." And I say, "This guy's been drilled with ABA all his life, hasn't he?" "Yeah." So they never teach him to initiate, because it's always adult driven, always. So out of context, by the therapist or tech, adult driven with tasks that are somewhat thought to be medically necessary, like discriminate between a triangle and a hexagon, so that once the child discriminates between a triangle and a hexagon, his autism will be gone. I sometimes make that kind of comment. And then after they teach those things, I never see very functional stuff like, are you teaching that kid to play maybe bingo with his cousins? No. All right. And then the last one is the reinforcers used within that are normally contrived. They don't have any relationship to the task at hand. So every one of those points, we're breaking all the roles of behavior analysis. Like, should it be done by that professional? No, by the people he lives with. Should they teach those concepts? No. And we knew this early, because if you read the preface on the Me book by Lobas, which, when was it? Very long time ago. He writes, we made some errors. And one of the errors was considering that teaching him certain tasks was going to have him spring out of autism. And he says that never happened. We were wrong. Yeah. But people don't read that. Oh, no, people just don't read it. And the last one, which is the tasks at hand have to be very functional. I always sometimes make fun and I say, I teach him to wipe his butt. Why? Because I don't want him at 50 years old having somebody to wipe his butt.
Right.
All right. Now, he may discriminate triangles and hexagons really well, and he may discriminate in a field of 3, which sounds very medical, but he's still terribly autistic, not social, and he can't go to the bathroom independently either.
Right.
So that's what we impact. And the last one, the reinforcer, has to be, we know our science says, it has to be logically connected to what motivated me and the behavior I presented and what happens when I present that behavior. That's my short explanation.
Right.
So that was just a snippet of our chat with Dr. Fernando Armendariz. If you are interested in listening to him even more, he will be in our upcoming episode of Mentorship Espresso. So be on the lookout for that. I'm sure the link will appear somewhere here, or maybe here.
Every start of the year begins conference season. And in February, late February, March, what typically kicks off the conference season for us and for myself is CalABA, the California Association for Behavior Analysis annual conference.
Yeah, so it was my first.
All right.
Yeah,
yes, that's cool. It was probably my 24th or something like that. So it's
who's counting?
Right. I don't know. I started at a young age. There were some interesting talks that I made note of because I thought they'd be kind of cool to give a really brief summary of those talks. One of them in particular that kind of coincides with our first discussion was a topic on grit, which I thought was really interesting The panel was called "The Cost of Compassion: Why Grit is the Ethical Choice in Behavior Analysis," and it was by Adam Ventura, Kate Weimer, Brianna Snyder, and Jose Rios. So it was an interesting topic because it kind of gives the flip side of a topic that's becoming really popular, like burnout, right? So it kind of gives the perspective of being able to persevere through things, and they talked a lot about how it's the ethical choice in teaching clients, to be able to persevere, be independent, learn how to deal with challenges, and it's the more dignified approach than to prompt them through everything, to do things for them because it's easier, to wipe their mouths for them, to figure things out for them, to deny them of certain experiences because it's going to be too hard. So I really appreciated that perspective. And Jose brought up a topic called the dignity of risk, which I wasn't, although I think I've heard him talk about it just in personal conversations. I couldn't really tell you what that was, and I really appreciated it to the point where I think it would probably be a really good webinar to do and for him to talk about. So maybe I'll leave it at that, and I'll leave a little teaser for him to talk about that. But just the whole concept of grit at a behavior analysis conference, I think was really, really interesting and a really needed topic.
That's cool. I didn't see that talk. Although thankfully I think all of the presentations were recorded, right? So we can check them out later. But I kind of like that idea of grit being something to strive for rather than burnout as something to avoid. Like, obviously we want to avoid burnout, but like, especially in the world of behavior analysis, we know that just engaging in avoidant or escape behaviors is probably not going to set you up for the most success. So if you're just engaging in self-care, or you're just trying to keep things balanced just to avoid burnout, you're probably missing something really crucial that's going to propel you forward. So grit being the antithesis to burnout in different ways. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. The other one was off of a keynote presentation that Dr. Shane Spiker did, and he talked about humble behaviorism. A few of the articles that he referenced, one of them was a 1991 article called Humble Behaviorism. I think he was involved in the republishing of kind of the sequel to that article called Humble Behaviorism Redux or Redo. I don't know how that is presented. And then, there was another article that he presented called Compassion, the Eighth Dimension of Applied Behavior Analysis. So in that presentation, one of the most interesting parts were he gave 10 lessons that he presented about humble behaviorism. Things such as never ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. I thought was really cool. I'll just share a few because there was all 10 of them. Everyone is trying their best in their circumstance. I think that kind of matches up with what we were talking about earlier in terms of, what our individual circumstances are, and that we're all trying to do our best within that. I think that was important. The realization that my values are not your values. And it's one of the things that I talk a lot about when it comes to mentorship, that, there are things that I value, but I don't need to impose them on a mentee. I need to learn what their values are. So I thought that, it was really great. He identified that as an important lesson. He talked about accomplishments that should be measured by quality, not quantity. I thought was really interesting that, measuring the quality of things, not necessarily how much of something I could do, I think is really important. And kindness and compassion work much better than anything else, which is so true. So anyway, the topic was great, and he did a great job of presenting it in the great way he knows how. He's always adds nice comedy, and he referenced a lot of the like a lot of 90s and 80s movies and pop culture type things.
So there was Ghostbusters. there's Transformers, there was Teenage
Right.
Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I
So-
like how he fully explained those things for some people in the audience who
Right.
might not have lived through
Indeed,
those things.
indeed.
Just to speak a little bit on his presentation. So, I mean, first off, fantastic speaker. Just like you can tell he, I mean, maybe he's not, I shouldn't speak for him, but he appears to be such a natural, in that space. But it was funny because like I saw the title and honestly, like I was not super enthusiastic at first about it. And maybe that's just my own personal perspective. Because I think I do a pretty good job of like being compassionate and also recognizing that like I'm not an expert on much of anything. Being newer to the field, I try to come in with approaches that really bring everyone in, as opposed to me saying, hey, I'm here, so this is what we're doing. And it's funny because even as he read out some of these lessons, like I might have seen the lesson, like my values are not your values, flash across the screen and like rolled my eyes at it. But as he started explaining it and giving his context and his stories, I found myself nodding along.
Yeah.
So I think it was there was so much to learn there. I agree with you too. I think the one that stuck out to me the most was the my values are not your values. It is so easy, I mean in anything, but especially as behavior analysts, to come in with your agenda of what you perceive to be is the best course of action for anything. And talk about humble behaviorism. You should be humbled very quickly if you come in guns blazing, and then, you know, a parent should check you and be like, oh, actually, that thing you really are set on teaching my child, I don't care about.
Right. Indeed.
Here, there are other priorities. And, you know, as we are serving other people, that idea of my values are not your values. We have to be really careful about how much of our values we bring to the table and allow the space for children and for parents and for families, and for our clinical associates or behavior techs. You know, they're the ones who are there the majority of the time. So everybody needs space at that table, which requires us, I think, to pull back a little bit.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So great lessons. And then the last one that resonated with me was the closing keynote by Dr. Tyra Sellers.
Oh, yeah.
Entitled Committed Supervision for Behavior Analysts, Empowering the Next Generation of Practitioners. One of the several things that resonated with me is she showed a video clip of, I think, a Native American person talking about the 5 generations. So he kind of shared how we all experience 5 generations in our life, which are our grandparents, our parents, us, our children, and then our grandchildren. And as he said, if we're lucky. And then she kind of paralleled that to the generations that we experience as behavior analysts, which are, let's say, the individuals who taught our direct supervisors or mentors, and then our supervisors or mentors, ourselves, those that we supervise and mentor, and then those who they will supervise and mentor, and just kind of talked about the intergenerational impact of the different levels of, you know, those that pour into us and then how we pour into others. So I thought it was kind of just a cool visual, and I felt, you know, surrounded by those that have come before me and those that I've been able to invest in and support, you know. So I just thought it was kind of a neat perspective, and I'd never heard it like that, you know, and it related to her topic on, you know, supervision. And, you know, she also shared some different lessons along the way that, you know, I thought it was great. You know, I know we're running low on time, so we need to start landing the plane here. But you know, that generational perspective was awesome, and it coincided with the lessons that she shared about being an effective supervisor, a committed supervisor. I thought were great. So I just love the opening part of that was awesome.
It ultimately reminded me of kind of, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but like the golden rule, right? Kind of this idea of do unto others. How would I like to be treated in this circumstance? And that for me, the more that I can give my supervisees moments where they feel empowered, moments where they can connect to just that human experience. Some of my favorite moments with people who have taught me is when we are both throwing up our hands saying, yeah, we're stumped. We don't know what to do. And being able to share those moments with people that we're learning with or people who we are teaching. Don't underestimate the impact of that as part of the ripple effect that we can generate. That like, it's okay to not have the answers, but kind of going back to one of Shane Spiker's points, just everyone is trying their best in the circumstance, right? So all of that goes hand in hand with just cultivating a really sound mentor-mentee or supervisor-supervisee relationship so that they can keep it going and address those future problems that they come across with the same understanding and the same humanity and also grit and drive.
Indeed. So again, a lot of great lessons, and I think the next one for me is APBA coming up in a few weeks in Dallas, Texas.
Awesome.
But there's, a bunch all throughout the country of different conferences. Again, I recommend the California Association for Behavior Analysis and that conference and joining the association and all of that. And also APBA, two wonderful associations.
Yeah, definitely. Just being at CalABA this year was very meaningful to me because as I was still in the process of like moving and figuring stuff out during that conference. And it almost like knocked me off my feet how from like the first speaker I saw, I was just getting more and more inspired to do different things in my own clinical practice. Things that I think will better or best suit my clients with whom I'm working. Stuff that aligns more with maybe not my values per se, but how I would like to be helping others and how I would like to be effectively practicing. Kind of blew my mind. I was like, I can do that. Like I can approach this this context like I can reframe it into a behavioral context, and then that opens the doors for me to help people in what I consider to be a more effective way. Amazing. And then just to be among like-minded professionals. That was really empowering to me, and to get that larger sense of communities.
The ABA in Business conference, I'll be presenting that. And we'll also get the person putting that together, Melanie Page, to do a webinar for us. So
awesome. Very excited.
That'll happen. But I think we're out of time. I think why don't we land this plane, and we'll see everybody next time at the 3rd episode of Mentorship Mindset. And thank you everybody for joining.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.